The Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences.
Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment.
We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you. Welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. This is part 2 of Leigh's journey. Join us as she shares her healing process, confronting the challenges of pregnancy amidst a pandemic, the health system, and her own traumatic past. Despite a difficult upbringing marked by abuse, she embarks on a journey to redefine her narrative and become a loving parent. As she navigates pregnancy, she faces not only physical discomfort, but also the added pressures of a global pandemic and an unsupportive healthcare system. This episode goes beyond the surface, scrutinizing the raw realities of childbirth and the often overlooked importance of informed consent. We explore the disconnect between healthcare professionals and expectant mothers. Join us for part 2 of Leigh's story.
He didn't tell me anything else the rest of the night. So he held 3 fingers and then he repaired it. And then he left the room. And I was like, I know that's not good. Like, I know there are 4 degrees of tearing. And then within, so 3rd degree tear, they classify it as ABC. A means, so your anal sphincter, there are 2 muscles. Your external anal sphincter, which is when you are like holding in your poop, that's that muscle contracting. And then your internal anal sphincter, which you don't have voluntary control over. It's kind of like your heart or something. It involuntary works to help keep your back, basically. And so A and B, 3A and B tears mean it ruptured your external anal sphincter. Mm-hmm. And 3C tear means it went through your internal anal sphincter as well. And then a 4th degree tear means it basically went all the way and you have one hole. And so I asked the nurse, I don't know, a while after he left, like, what did I tear? And she's like, I don't know. She had to look in the notes and it was classified as a 3B tear. And so I was like, okay, it's not like the worst, which would be 3C, but like, that's not good. And so I was immediately worried about what does this mean? And I was like Googling stuff. Anyway, so long story short, I went home, finally had a bowel movement, I don't know, 4 or 5 days after delivery. And I like pooped myself, basically.
Oh.
What?
5 days later?
Yeah, it was like 4 days. It was like 4 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was scary.
Yeah, I just pooped myself. And immediately I was like, it's not over. Like, I felt so much relief at the hospital, like, oh my God, that was a nightmare, but it's over. And so immediately it was like, this isn't over. Like, this is not good. And so anyways, I tried to call my doctor, the delivering doctor. He was basically very dismissive. And I was like, I'm very worried. Like, a stitch came undone. This doesn't seem like this is normal. And he was just like, oh, it's probably just nerve damage and like, it'll heal. And I was like, are you sure a stitch didn't come undone? And he was like, I guess you could come in and get it looked at, but like, that's never happened to me. And I was just like, okay, so he thinks I'm insane. Like, it was just, so, and I could just tell he just had this very like withholding tone. And so in that moment I could tell like nobody's going to help. Like, he's not going to help me. And so I went to I proactively, the original OB was like, I'll see you at 6 weeks. I was like, fuck that. No, I'm scheduling an appointment at like 1 or 2 weeks postpartum. And I went about 1 week. And then around that time, I noticed what I thought was blood, like around the anal area on a daily basis, like in my postpartum diaper. And so I scheduled another appointment at like 2 or 3 weeks postpartum to ask what that was. And it turned out it was actually poop. It was like kind of dark brown and I thought it was maybe blood. And so basically I had like daily anal incontinence. after the delivery. And I could tell he didn't, to this day, I don't actually know if like he didn't know what was happening, or it seemed like he didn't know what was happening. Even though I'll get into later, it's a very common occurrence after a severe tear. So basically I went to all these different doctors, urogynecologist, colorectal, and I had a really bad fecal urgency. And then, I didn't like fully poop myself, but I had like, what they call fecal smearing, which is like after you have a bowel movement, your sphincter just like doesn't close all the way. And so you just have like poop just leaks out. And it was every single day. And I basically went to all these doctors and I tried all these different pelvic floor therapists and none of it helped. And the doctors were all like, things look okay down there. So we're not really sure why this is happening. And there's like imaging you can have done in your rectal area to see. So what happens is education about severe tears. In my opinion, severe tear should be the thing that we want to avoid the most in a childbirth, not a C-section. When you get a severe tear, 20 to 40% of women have symptoms, consequences from that for the rest of their lives. Whether that's painful sex, whether that's some form of anal incontinence, so gas incontinence or fecal incontinence, like 20 to 40%. So almost half of women will never recover. Every single surgeon I saw said once you rupture anal sphincter muscle, it never goes back to its original functioning. It might function good enough, but just because we anatomically put it back together, we cannot functionally restore the same level of function. So it might still work at an A- level, and that might be good enough for you to remain fecally continent the rest of your life. But for women that maybe have like pre-existing issues that would make their sphincter muscle a little bit weaker, that's really not good, because our sphincter muscle is actually the only muscle we have that is at rest contracted. So the entire day, our sphincter is like holding tightly closed to keep our poop back. And then when we poop, it actually relaxes to let the poop out, which is why we're not supposed to push poop out. And so if you think about it, if that muscle is weakened, it is not squeezing as tightly at rest. And that is how you have fecal incontinence. And there's like different statistics, and I can share those links so that like, yeah, I'm not spreading fake news, but there's like one statistic that up to 30% of first-time deliveries may have like anal sphincter injury that is undetected, whether that's like the sphincter is ruptured or it's just like thinned or stretched or something, because it can be very difficult to see it and repair it. There's like a lot of swelling, there's all the fluids, there's all the blood, there's like the poop, your poop, the baby's poop. And in other countries, yeah.
What's going on down there?
Lots happening. And if you've been pushing for 4 hours, there's a shit ton of swelling. And in other countries, their standard of care is they wheel you to an operating room where there's proper irrigation and lighting. And they will have a colorectal urogynecologist specifically to repair it. They do not do that here. They do it in the delivery room. So really the most important factor in a woman healing from a severe tear at childbirth is the quality of her immediate repair. Mm-hmm. Like that is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you do like PT can help. I'm not like crapping on PT, but the most important thing is the technique of the surgeon, their ability to assess the severity of the tear and their skill in repairing it and their technique in doing that and the kind of stitching that they use. So like the quality of the rest of your life is dependent on that like hour after delivery. And yeah, the standard of care is just like not good enough to consistently give a good outcome to women. So, there's just like a few statistics I just want to read off about that, if that's okay. Um, so basically what happened with me, maybe I'll say, is so he claimed to repair it. 9 months later, I had to push to get rectal imaging, even though again, in other states, or in other countries, they automatically set that up for you. So automatically 3 months postpartum, you're set up with a colorectal appointment and imaging. Automatically, you're set up with pelvic floor therapists. Like all that is done for you. And I had to fight my way through doctor after doctor and I asked for my own imaging. And so at 9 months postpartum, after everyone kept telling me, oh, just give it time, it'll probably just get better. And it never did. And I didn't leave the house for 9 months. Yeah, they told me the imaging revealed my anal sphincter had 120 degrees that was missing or separated. So like a third. So my sphincter is in the shape of a C, and it was separated by 120 degrees. I don't want to say it's missing because technically when the muscle is injured, it like contracts or it retracts into itself. So it's like not gone, so no wonder I can hold my poop because you need an O to hold your poop.
Yeah.
And so how that happens is, the surgeon has poor skill, or the doctor at delivery has poor skill. So meaning they assess it incorrectly, they repair it poorly, with poor technique or bad stitching that just like doesn't hold it well enough. Or they do the best job that they can. And because the circumstances are just really difficult, yeah, it can just be the luck of the draw that, it doesn't, it can just be luck of the draw that it doesn't heal back together. And so I think mine was probably a combination of both because he assessed it as a less severe tear than the imaging showed. The imaging showed it was more severe than what his notes did. And I got all of my birth records, every single page of my medical records for my birth. And I went through them with an independent party because I didn't believe any doctor after this. So at that point, so I'm just going to read these statistics really quickly. So even after repair of a torn anal sphincter right after delivery, separated anal muscles are still seen in up to 40% of women postpartum, which is why probably up to 40% of them still have symptoms. According to a survey of OBs in the UK, less than 1/3 of them reported they felt adequately trained in repairing anal sphincter injuries that happened during childbirth. Blah, blah, blah. Like forceps increase your risks, crazy amount. But instrumental deliveries do as well of severe tearing and anal incontinence. So the average risk of severe tearing is 3 to 6%, I think, estimated. I know in the UK they say it could be up to 10%, but they have a higher rate of instrumental delivery there. And then if 20 to 40% of women after that struggle with like fecal incontinence, that is my math, 1.2 to 2.4% of vaginal births end in fecal incontinence. Which, if you like look at the statistics of the risks of cesarean sections in terms of like, right, mortality, blood clots, all that stuff. I don't know, like people can look at them. It was hard to find specifically, but there's just one on AmericanPregnancy.org, but it says, 1 to 6 women per 100 require a blood transfusion in a cesarean delivery, which about the same percent of women that are fecally incontinent. Possible injury to organs such as bowel or bladder, 2 out of 100. So again, about 2%. So about the same. There's other things like adhesions. Adhesions usually can be fixed. with scar massage, other things. Infection usually can be treated, obviously, like sepsis, other things are really severe. Yeah, mortality rate is obviously higher. So, I mean, especially women of color, like my whole rant today probably won't be as applicable because you're not going to want to undergo a major surgery if you're already at a 2 to 3 times increased risk of dying in childbirth in the United States. And I'm obviously not talking about the risks to the baby, you know, asthma and microbiome things, but like fecal incontinence is very, very hard to fix. The only reliable way to fix it is a colostomy bag. There's like a nerve stimulation device that was shown effective for bladder incontinence, and they inadvertently found it was helpful for fecal incontinence. But there's like debates on how successful it is. It doesn't fix it. It like buys you more time to get to the bathroom, basically. Whereas like bladder incontinence has more treatments. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that I think cesarean deliveries are easy or they're always safer or something, but I think I have so much anger about them being framed as more risky. But I feel like that's because women's quality of life seems to not matter or be a factor in the equation. And it is like devastating and humiliating to not be able to have sex because of pain, or to not have orgasms anymore because your perineum wasn't repaired correctly. Or because psychologically you don't want anything in your vagina because of what happened to you. It's devastating to go from being a college athlete to then being afraid to leave your home and then thinking, okay, when I'm 50, odds are I'm going to have a colostomy bag, like probably. And I don't know why those aren't a part of the risk equation. And so I did not know fecal incontinence was a possible outcome of vaginal delivery. Like, it's rare, but the abdominal surgery risks that are talked about are like either the same amount of rare or like it just doesn't feel like there's that much difference statistically. And so why are the cesarean section things talked about and the vaginal things not? So what ended up happening is, like I said, anatomically, you can put the sphincter back together, but it doesn't fix it sometimes. And so sphincter surgery used to be the first treatment, but the success rates weren't great. And so it's now not recommended because it's a very grueling, you basically have to recut and resew everything down there. I think the success rate was like 50 to 80% immediately. And then it was like 50 to 80%. It was successful, 50 to 80% after 10 years. They just reverted back to their original symptoms and they don't really know why that happens. And so a lot of the surgeons I saw deterred me, but they also dismissed me. They were like, your symptoms aren't bad enough. Like if you're pooping your pants, it'd be a different story. I'm like, I'm basically am. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. That is get.
Yeah. It's like, I'm saying it's bad. I don't want to be alive.
Yeah.
Like, I need to do something. I need to do something. And so there are some severe chair support groups on Facebook. So I created Facebook, even though I hate social media, just to have access to those women. Those are my lifelines, and that's where I found everything. And so I'll provide those links to you guys. But basically, there's like 2 different camps about the surgery. One of the camps is, like, we don't do the surgery. We try this like nerve stimulator, or we try health core therapy. We try changing your diet. We try Imodium. We try these other things because it's not a very successful intervention and it's really grueling. It's a lot of time. There's another camp that is like, if you do it when you're younger, there's a greater chance, like with your healthier tissue, that you might have better success. You might get more longevity out of it. And we think if you take care of it well, it's worth doing it. It's certainly worth trying. So that's not helpful that there's basically like two polar opposite thoughts about the surgery. But in my mind, I was like, I need to try this. And so there was one surgeon that was actually talked about by multiple women in the group that they had all gone to for similar experiences, and either their symptoms were like completely gone or had been like really significantly alleviated. And he is in St. Louis.
Cool.
And so I flew across the country. First, actually, I had a phone consultation with him, and he spent like an hour on the phone with me. And he talked through like my birth records with me and talked about like everything he said that he thought went wrong. Obviously, he was like, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But he talked about like how he thought the stitches that were used were incorrect, and this is the technique he thinks should be done, and like he thinks women should be repaired in the OR and all these things. And I was just like, how is this so obvious to you? And nobody, like, I just felt like everyone had been lying to me for 15 months or 12 months. It was a year later that I talked to him.
Oh.
And it was just like, you and that dumb imaging machine are the only people that have actually been like completely transparent with me this entire time.
Ouch.
And like, how is that? I just couldn't believe it. So I was like, I want to try this, like mostly because I trust the women that have seen you. I still like, it's hard to trust one person, one doctor anymore. But I was like, you at least had the integrity to be honest with me. I could tell the other surgeons I saw didn't want to like throw my delivering doctor under the bus. Like they didn't really say anything, but I could just tell that they were thinking things and not saying them. So I'm so grateful I have the privilege, we are upper middle class, to fly there. The recovery is like 12 weeks if you don't have any complications. It's like 6 weeks for the superficial stitches to close, but 12 weeks for the internal deep muscle stitches to close. And I ended up getting actually an infection, and part of the superficial part of the wound opened up, and it took like 3 months to heal. And I was having like daily panic attacks, and it was terrible, but it was also amazing because my symptoms are like significantly better. And I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm so happy that I did it. And I feel like more at peace with, okay, when I hit menopause, I'm probably kind of screwed. And hopefully they've developed things by that time. But I feel so happy, like maybe I can be a normal mom.
Yeah.
I tried going to some mom groups, and I just felt so alone and so different. So I was like, all the things you guys are worrying about are just dumb. Like, I was like, they don't matter. And I couldn't relate to anything. And I felt like my story, they're all talking about their birth, and I'm like, my story is too big, like, and then you talk about it and everyone's, there's this horror kind of in my story. And it's like, people don't know what to do with this idea that childbirth is this beautiful process of bringing new life into the world, and it's supposed to be empowering and magical and a miracle. And there was such a devastation that it brought into my life and in my body. And so it just, I don't know. And so I felt like I was frozen in time until I healed from the surgery. And I remember like I finished my daughter's nursery, and that was like 15 months postpartum. 15 months postpartum, I got the surgery. And so it was like 18 or 19 months postpartum, I finally finished her nursery, and I started like doing mom things. And I still have some symptoms, but it's so much better. So I still absolutely think like I said, there are risks and downsides to that surgery, sphincter repair surgery. And so it absolutely needs to be something each woman decides for herself. And I'm not saying, all these surgeons are liars if they tell you to not get it at all, but more like everyone has a different opinion, and you have to know what risk you are willing to live with. Like, there are some women that go, I don't my symptoms are manageable the way they are. It's fine. I don't want to do this while my child is young. I don't know. So yeah, there's just this list of statistics I wanted to read out about like pelvic floor dysfunction is probably the last thing I wanted to say, but I'm so angry about how little information I was given about what could happen to my body.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that with forceps delivery, or severe tear, I didn't have urinary incontinence or pelvic organ prolapse. I am lucky that because it occurs highly, with instrumental deliveries. And so I just want women to know, like, if you have an uncomplicated vaginal birth, it's probably fine. Like, you'll probably be fine. But if you don't, like, yeah, it's just quality of life. It's the rest of your life. And people live like 40 years after menopause now,
Yes.
So I don't know. So,
Yeah. And
yeah, that's what,
you were not listened to by your medical team. Then you were basically gaslit. Then
yeah,
you can't get information from anybody. You had to go to Facebook to get
yeah,
to connect with other people. It's just like, that's just, I'm so angry for you. And it's just so much to go through.
Yeah.
and I'm
going through the same thing. Like, you had zero information all throughout pregnancy, all throughout birth and postpartum. Like, I'm so mad for all the professionals that you came in encounter with. And your doula too, like, didn't even say anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, somebody speak up. And it doesn't have to be you, because like, you're the one going through like the labor, and like, you just don't have all that information presented to you. And it's just so frustrating.
Yeah. And I felt like insane because, all these people raving about this doctor. This hospital is like a top ranked hospital in my area. Literally everybody raved going there. Everybody raves about the nurses there. Seattle is like epicenter of medicine. I'm a highly educated, wealthy, like white woman. And I went to UW doctor. I mean, I just felt like insane. Like, I just felt insane, but I felt distrusting of doctors because every time I go to the doctor now, I always review their notes, because every single time I saw a doctor, there would be things in their notes that they did not communicate to me, like things that they noticed about my body that were not, that weren't like good, or that were wrong, not wrong, but you know what I mean? Like, that they didn't tell me, or contradictory things. Like, they said one thing to my face and they wrote another thing in their notes. And so I don't know. I do still feel insane, or like uniquely cursed. I feel like I don't know how all these people have these great experiences, and it was so terrible to me. But I don't know. I know that I spent a lot of time, but I would love to read the statistics, and they're all just from the book. Ever since I had my baby, all of them are from the book. So if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know how to work my monitors here. So, in women without sphincter injuries, the estimated probability of fecal incontinence is about 7% at 40 years old. And it jumps to about 20% at 60 years old. So that's like if you don't have a sphincter injury. And most women, assuming a lot of women give birth vaginally, that probably includes like women that have given birth vaginally. But in women with one or more sphincter injuries, so severe tear, childbirth, the probability of fecal incontinence at 40 is 26%. 26 to 33%. And at 60, it jumps to 36 to 50%. Yeah. So huge increase of fecal incontinence if you have a sphincter injury. I said that. It's not just the severe things like fecal incontinence. Like there's so many women in these severe tear groups that talk about they have so many struggles with like recurring fissures or hemorrhoids or like rectocele, which is a type of prolapse, or they somehow developed like IBS after their delivery, which I think is probably a trauma-based nervous system response, honestly. So just like all the other that seem like small things, but it's like every time you poop, feel like there's shards of glass in your ass. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So the small things too. They're not actually small.
And I feel like we're just supposed to we're told like that's how it's supposed to be. You're like, just deal with it.
Yeah. And so the book kind of talks about, so a cesarean delivery is protective of your pelvic floor if you only ever have cesarean deliveries. So if you have a vaginal birth and then have cesarean delivery, there's like minor incremental, protection, like prevention of pelvic floor dysfunction. But, it's not that impactful if you have one vaginal delivery, if that makes sense. So, interesting statistic, 1996 survey of female obstetricians in Great Britain. 30%, but I've seen this in other studies, 30% of female obstetricians say they would never have a vaginal delivery. They would only have a cesarean delivery because of their awareness of pelvic injury. And they cited pelvic injury as the main reason for that. Even though in hospitals, and I think the WHO recommends 10 to 15% of deliveries be cesarean sections. So it's like, there's this disconnect, like the doctors that are telling us, they're advising us to have a vaginal delivery, some of them wouldn't even choose to have a vaginal delivery themselves. And it's like, why are we holding our patients to different standards than doctors who are educated in this would even have? It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, like despite innovations in treatment of pelvic floor problems, even a great surgeon's ability to recreate your normal pelvic anatomy remains limited. Your levator muscles and their accompanying nerves can't be surgically rebuilt. So nearly 20% of normal vaginal deliveries are associated with pudendal nerve injury afterwards, and a significant number persist over the long term. Forceps deliveries increase your risk of pelvic nerve injury by 40 to 60%. Two separate studies show cesarean delivery, when performed before labor begins, tend to preserve normal nerve function. Of women who had anal sphincter tears, up to 50% of them had instrumental deliveries. Anal sphincter injury was significantly more common with forceps than vacuum, 80% versus 40%. So vacuum is a little bit better. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so a lot of stuff. And I think the last thing was, there's one statistic, and I'm probably you can cut out me. Oh, it's here. One survey found that women with no prior deliveries who were not informed of the link between childbirth and pelvic floor injury would select cesarean delivery only 5% of the time. So if you have no information, you would only choose cesarean delivery 5% of the time. Another study presented young women with the hypothetical scenario that vaginal delivery would carry a 15% risk of urinary incontinence. And then 50% of them said that they would choose a C-section over risking the incontinence. So it's like, if women have the information a huge number of them would opt to change the mode of delivery that they would choose. So then, oh, that is the end of my long rant. That was all from the book and some articles, but yeah, and I can share my surgeon who I'm indebted to. And last but not least, some of the women in the severe tear Facebook groups have kind of come together to try to create a US-based nonprofit for obstetric injuries. And the website will be up soon, and it's called solaceforwomen.org. And we hope to start to have some resources about that, because there is nothing for women in the US. There is in Australia and Europe, and there's nothing in the US. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm so happy that you found a group of women that like you can, rely on, and you guys can share this information, but it's also a group that no one wants to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a group that shouldn't exist, especially because in my scenario, like there was a choice. Like it wasn't an emergency, and like it wasn't I think it'd be one thing if it was like, we lost my daughter's heartbeat and it's like, that's the way the cookie crumbled. I think it would have been easier to cope with that in a way. But the fact that like there was a choice and I was kind of choosing blind and set up to make the wrong choice, or a choice that wasn't within my values, it still haunts me and I have a hard time with it. And so if you have like trauma around your birth, there's a lot of body-based trauma therapies to help with that. EMDR, and then some other ones that may not be as well known are somatic experiencing therapy and sensory motor psychotherapy, lifespan integration therapy. There are probably more that I'm just not. Yeah, there are probably more. Which I'm trying to do, but it's hard. It's still hard, You look at your daughter every day and they're a reminder of what happened, and it's just So I appreciate you guys letting me share, and I hope that you guys and people walk away with like not somebody who hates vaginal childbirth, or thinks there's a right or wrong way to give birth, but just that like it's easy for hospitals and doctors to inform women. It's easy to give out a sheet of paper that lists the statistics of each mode of delivery. And I actually I wanted to link you guys. There's a really good one. I think it's on like birthconnection.org that compares all of them: C-sections, instrumental deliveries, and regular vaginal deliveries. And it's like, if I'd seen that before I gave birth, it's so frustrating. So it's easy. And hospitals, doctors, they don't do that. And if I cared at all about my patients, I would do that. It's just like, so there's no reason for why people don't tell you about it. So I hope people walk away with like, I'm not hating on however you choose to give birth. It's just, we deserve to know the risks. And if a woman wants to say, hey, I care so much about sex, and I'm like so afraid of, maybe being limited by my bowel and bladder incontinence, that like I'm choosing the risk of cesarean delivery because I value that. Great. Like that. Yeah. Oh, amazing. Like that. Or if a woman is like, what, I'm so excited about experiencing the, like being able to taste my own strength in going through an unmedicated childbirth. Great. Like amazing. Do that. But there is a right way to do it. And I don't know. Yeah.
We're often just in the dark making decisions, also just what our terrible education system has taught us. There's a lot. We're learning every day still.
Yeah.
And all the different birth complications, and we hear a lot of stories. So,
Yeah. It's just sad. And like, obviously in other countries, they don't have as high C-section rates or all the bad statistics we have. And so, but I think it's frustrating because it's like, well, we're not operating in an ideal medical environment. Like people are like, well, it's not supposed to be like this. And it's like, well, but what is the best choice we can make given our current medical system? It's not in the medical system we wish we had. It's not in Norway's medical system or France's or who's ever. It's like, so I just, if you only want 1 or 2 children, and you're willing to risk, the risks of cesarean delivery, I don't know. I'm all for being an advocate for women to look into that as a serious option. And if you want to introduce more control into your birth, great. You should do that. I don't know. And I think the most frustrating thing was like, if people tell you, if you're like, I'm really scared of childbirth, and people say, oh, don't worry, it's not that bad. It's like, listen to your fear. Like, yeah, don't let it hijack you, and don't listen to any other parts of you because that fear is there. But like, I was terrified of giving birth, and I think that was like for good reason. Because it can be scary, and because of my story, like in my trauma, I think. And so I wish I had actually, because people just try to reassure me, but I wish I'd actually looked at that and been like, no, this is valid, that I'm afraid of this. And you don't have to like do it the right way or the hardest way. Like, there are no points, I don't know, like what would be the right way for you? And maybe the right way isn't like pushing through it. Like, in your college basketball practices, you always had to just push through until you wanted to die and like past your breaking point and like see what your limits are. You don't have to test your limits. You can just motherhood test your limits as it is, like I don't know. You know what I don't know if you guys know what I'm trying to say, but it's just, you just do what is the right way for you. And if you're afraid, it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to take measures to reduce that fear if you know the risks. I think that's what I wish someone had told me. So.
Or just listen when you said that you were scared. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, have you heard about Alyssa Alter? She was one of our guests pretty early on, but she had a 4th degree tear, all the way to her anus.
Yeah. I think I did actually listen to that episode, and it was again listening to that I was like, how terrible my doctor was, because I think she was the one who said like her OB made her come in like weekly or every 2 weeks postpartum to get it checked. From what I remember, and I was just like, oh my God, like it, and I was just the amount, like how differently she was treated. But I also think I wanted to emphasize, that's why I wanted to emphasize how important the immediate repair is. Because the amount of knowledge you have or not, like, doesn't. Pelvic floor therapy can help, but if part of your muscle is missing, it's not gonna fix it.
True.
It's helpful. It's not a miracle worker. So like, if you're not getting better after maybe like a month or two, maybe a couple months, I wish someone had told me. I mean, I did pelvic floor therapy for like 6 months. I wish someone had told me, Lindsay, if it doesn't get better after 6 or 8 weeks, you don't waste your time, because I spent so much time on it and money, and it was just, and hope. Like, that was the most painful part of it, is like hoping maybe this is the week it'll be better, and it never was. So
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Like, I know it's not an easy one, but I think it really gives a lot of women out there like just a chance to like speak up for themselves more. And just like understand that there's things that can happen. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry. I just feel like there was a lot missing, and it's not fair to you. And it's not fair to like how you have to keep going. So I'm just really sorry. There was a lot missed there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for talking so long. So
thank you so much for coming on. And we'll, if you want to share, your resources and everything, we'll definitely share them with our listeners. And if any listeners out there want to reach out, we can definitely connect you with your Facebook group or with you directly, if you're having issues. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!